when you first got into the drug dealing business, describe for us how that process worked.
Well, most of my clients were already drug dealers who were driving the vehicles. So it was just a matter of getting the supply from Terry and actually getting over to my customers who needed the demand. So I didn't have to look far, to find clientele.
So your customers were actually drug dealers themselves. You weren't selling on the streets, as they say?
Correct.
And how was it that you already had these customers who were drug dealers?
Well, because those were the ones that could afford, or who wanted to actually purchase these vehicles outright. But because of the currency transaction reports and different forms that, you can't walk into a place with over $10,000 in cash and actually purchase these vehicles. So they needed to have a way to be able to live the way they wanted to live and do it within a parameter that wouldn't have a light shine on top of them.
So would it be fair to say it was a fairly easy transition? You already had the customers in place from the car business to go to the drug business?
Yeah, I had known for a while. I knew where they lived at. I knew where everything was in place.
How is it that you were able to get the supply from Terry Flannery? Because having done business for him for such a period of time, it was a situation where he knew that if I told him something, it was honorable. It wasn't, it wasn't anything that he gave me money and I ran off. He understood that even the collapse of the car business wasn't directly attributed to me. So at the same token, it was a chance for him to get his money. He could recap his money back and at the same time allow me to just isolate just doing, the cars and houses for him. And at the same time, earn a living as well. So you didn't actually stop the business altogether. You just kept that confined to the BMF organization? Yeah, for different members who needed, different apartments, houses, cars for their own personal use. We need to stop for a break somewhere along in here. Actually, probably now is just as good as any. All right, let's take a 15-minute break, ladies and gentlemen. You may proceed. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Marshall, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 27. We looked at it a few minutes ago. If you would look at pages 9 and 10 in that exhibit. Do those pages actually have your signature on them? 9 and 10 does. And that's the same plea agreement you looked at before for the Northern District of Georgia, February of 2007. And that's the one you actually signed? Correct. Okay. Now, when we left, we were talking about someone you know as Terry Flannery. If you'd look at Government's Exhibit number 22-A, do you recognize that individual? This is Terry. Your Honor, we'd offered Government's Exhibit 22-A into evidence. No objection. 22A is admitted. Is this the individual that you know as Terry Flannery? Yes, it is. Now, I'm also showing you Government's Exhibit number 15-A. Are you familiar with that? Yes. You testified you know an individual by the name of Demetrius Flannery, right? This is correct. Would you recognize him if you saw him? Yes. Your Honor, we'd offer Government's Exhibit 15-A in evidence. It's already in. Who is this individual? That's Demetrius Flannery. Now, this license says Ricardo Santos, but you know that individual to be Demetrius Flannery? Correct. How did you get involved with Demetrius Flannery? Well, just actually having a successful run of acquiring, property and cars to Terry. He suggested my services over to his brother. All right. And so, were you dealing drugs with Demetrius Flannery, or did you start with cars with Demetrius Flannery? Started with cars and property. So at this point, Terry and Demetrius were still friends? Correct. Now, at some point or what point did you start dealing drugs with Demetrius Flannery? After the brothers fell out. So there was a parting of the ways between the two brothers? This is correct. Now, at that point, you went to the meat side, if you will, of your organization? Correct. Now, was it still BMF? Yes, the whole organization was still BMF. Describe for us the process when you would buy drugs from Demetrius Flannery's organization. Tell us a typical day in the life of a drug dealer. Well, it would start off with a phone call and actually saying that the vehicle is here, and then from there I would actually go over to a certain location that we spoke about. In this case, let's say it's one of the houses that we would call the gate, and he would actually have everything, pretty much whatever your order was. If you ordered 15 or 20, whatever the case may have been, you would have let them know that you had the money for it, and they would already have it packed in a duffel bag, or you would count them out as they're putting them in the duffel bag. And then from there, you get in your vehicle and go, kind of like going through a drive-thru. So how long would this process take you? 35 minutes. And it was the same every time? It was according to what money you had on hand. Now, what do you mean by that? It would be according to, like, for example, if you have 400,000, then you can get 20 of them. If you had 300,000, then at that particular point, okay, hold on. You said if you have 400,000, you can get 20 of them. 400,000 what? $400,000. And you'd get 20 of what? 20 kilos of cocaine. I'm sorry. You said if you get 400, you get 20. What if you showed up with less money? Well, it's like shopping anywhere else. You're going to get less product. So, would you place an order ahead of time? Yeah, you would have that conversation ahead of time. Like, actually, when you meet him, you say, look, I need 15 of them. He'd say, okay. Say today is the 12th. The van will be here on the 20th, so I'll call you. And when I call you, just come over because it's already prearranged and pre-discussed of what you're going to get from him. Now, this what you're describing happens at the gate? Uh-huh. This is Government's Exhibit 6-A. Do you recognize this house? That's an aerial view shot of it. Of what? Of the house called the gate. And you've been to this house before? Several times. How big is this house, do you know? Probably about 3,200 square feet. It's not a small house? No. All right. Now, you said whenever he would call you, you'd place your order with this individual. Who are you talking about? This would be J-Bo, Chad Brown. Now, what was J-Bo's relationship to Meech? Because this is Meech's side of the organization, right? Right. So, what's J-Bo's relationship to Meech? He's the underboss, or the VP, vice president, Sort of his right-hand man? His assistant. Now, when you get there, how many people are there? Like, for instance, when you're going to pick up a delivery of cocaine at the gate, how many people are there? On the average of probably about 8 to 9 people. And what are these 8 to 9 people doing? It was various jobs, You probably may have 2 or 3 people counting money, and then you probably would have J-Bo there, and you would have another 2 people or so helping fill the duffel bags up and actually get your order to you. And then the other individuals would be those who either lived at the house or who were just hanging out at the house. Who were some of the people that you saw on? How many times did you go over to the gate to make purchases? Probably about 7 to 10 times. Now, is the gate here in Atlanta? Yes, it is. When you went over to the gate this 7 or 10 times, who were some of the people that you would see there? Let's start this way. Who were the people that typically counted the money? You would have a gentleman by the name of Little Rob. You would have Blue Da Vinci. You would have Throwback, D-Shock, and Tito. And who were the people, as you said, placing the orders and filling the bags? That would normally be Tito or D-Shock. Normally those two. And also on occasion, I had actually received the orders passed to me from Blue. That was on one occasion. You said there were typically other people who either lived at the house or hanging out at the house? Right. Who would those people be? For example, one of the individuals would be Mr. Fleming's right there. You said Mr. Fleming's right there. Who do you mean? Huh? You said Mr. Fleming's right there. Who do you mean? Fleming's Daniel. Can you describe him for me? Yeah, he has a tie on sitting next to his attorney. What does his hair look like? Bald black guy. Your Honor, let the record reflect he's identified the defendant. No objection. It shall.